Hello engravers, this is Justin here. This is another video in our series for the Music Engraving Tips Engraving Challenge for June 2020. And we are looking at Beach's Romance. This is an engraving by George Blakesley. We have a violin part here, and we also have a piano part here. Couple things that I want to talk about before we get into the specifics is the way this is presented as a published sort of piece. It is 9 by 12, so that's good. And it's doing interesting thing with the graphics here, which is makes it look a bit more professional. You have these artistic lines here. And then you have all the text up here, which is the title, subtitle. Notice the piano is underscore in bold because this is the piano part, and you'll see the same here in the violin part. This is a much more old-fashioned way of doing that because back in the day they would have plates that would have just violin and piano, and then they would underline the specific piece or component of the product, right? And then that way they only had to have one plate, and then they just gouged in an underline. So that's where that practice comes from. I'm not too much of a fan of it anymore because it does feel really old-fashioned, and the more standard thing would be to have the violin in the top left. But, you know, it's cool. Amy Beach down at the bottom. Then on page 2 we have this preface. It's fine. It's not telling much about the editorial stuff, but whatever. And page turner recommended. I mean, I would get rid of that. That's not really helpful to anybody because I certainly know pianists who could handle this without a page turner. Okay, let's look at a couple things in terms of layout. One thing I do want to kind of take issue with here is the mixed use of fonts. You've got this one here, which it looks like a Bodoni. It's either Bodoni or a Bodoni derivative, which is a very nice font. I actually use it as the main font for music engraving tips kind of style. Because it's used in a lot of older fashioned scores. So it's a nice choice of font. However, then you have this here, which is not Bodoni at all. Not actually sure what font that is. I can't tell off the top of my head. And then you have Bodoni here. And then down here, that's Bodoni-ish. And yet here, that's not Bodoni at all. So the point is you're mixing fonts a little bit, especially when you have two competing serif fonts like that. I would try to avoid that. You can use Bodoni in all your musical symbols. It's just not as common anymore. It was usually only used for the like the tempos and things like that. All right, let's look at layout. So this one goes up to 11 pages, and that accounts for the fact that there's 2 pages here. So this is actually page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now, this I'm going to take major issue with here. This big white space here. There's no reason for that. You could absolutely fill up this page or take these systems and squish them in to the rest of the piece, because there's definitely room for it. You've got a couple spots that are a little bit loose in terms of spacing. Right here, I would say. Right here probably as well. Maybe in right here. And probably in right here as well. So like you have the room, maybe even this one, but that's maybe not. You have the room to fit this all onto a full page. Or if you choose not to make it squished further, then expand it out. So which means adding more breaks and filling up the whole page. Because this looks really bad. when you're only using half a page, because it feels like the layout was not thought through. And I don't think that's true, because the layout is actually pretty good. It's just that one global consideration wasn't thought of here. So that's something that I would definitely fix. Let's have a look at our sizes, as we always do. So we have 7 millimeters in the piano part, and 4. Looks like just under 5. Might be 4.5. I'm not sure, because this thing rounds. Yeah, okay. That works. And for the most part, the spacing seems quite nice. It could be even better in a couple spots, but I'm not gonna get picky about that, because it's mostly details that are moving things around. So that's fine. So I'm gonna start at the top, and let's have a look at some of the engraving choices. So one thing I'm gonna say for the whole thing is some of the slur arcs, like some of the settings with the slurs, seem a little bit flat, kind of overall. So I might just tweak your settings globally and just add a little bit more arc on them and see how that would improve things. And then you also get some strange ties, like down here. We'll get to that in a minute. So like right at the top, you could get a little bit more arc on that. And things like this needs to go over the whole phrase like that. Same here. So you're doing the break here between the 3/8, which is good. But then over here, you break the phrase to have the 3 together. So that's inconsistent. You need to choose what you want to do. The best, obviously, would be to beam them together there. Same here. And there's no need to use the beaming to show the phrase when you already have phrase markings that are quite liberally applied here. And also this beam here is way too short. I don't know why that happened. You need to get it up to that line there. Okay. This is cute, this thing, but I think it feels really fussy when you could just open up this distance maybe like a millimeter. This feels really fussy. So I wouldn't mask hairpins like that. The other option, of course, is to reduce the length of the stems, which is valid when it's in a 2-voice situation. And again here, slurs, get them down to the note heads and give them more curve on them. All right, this is well done. Here, probably get it a little bit more in there, but having the 8th notes overlapped with the half note, this is well done. It's not done as much before because it can get ambiguous. I think right here it's fine, but that is an older fashioned thing of having the half note and the non-half note overlap like that. Let's talk about these ties a little bit. So it looks like this is a setting or something where if there's room, they're expanded from note head to note head outside. And I wouldn't recommend that when you also have ties in the same chord like this, where it's edge to edge. It just looks better when the ties match. So like right here, it looks really silly to me to have this all the way, this really long one up here, when you could just do this. And it looks much more consistent. Also be careful if some of these arcs are not quite consistent either. Definitely objects within the same chord should match as much as possible, because you don't want to make it look unusual and then draw the eye away from what's important, which is the shape of the chord. All right, this is good. Right here, be careful. I would put the tips right in the center, which means there wouldn't be much of a curve or a slope this way. There's not going to be much of a slope there, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. Okay, good. This is nice. That's a nice compromise there with the slur tip. Now here's where this starts to look a little weird to me, where you have the eighth note separate and then the half note is over top of it. That's where I say, no, why not just do an eighth rest there? Because that eighth note is clearly not functioning in any real way, right? Here you can kind of get away with it, but yeah, not a big fan of that. Definitely want to go all the way to the edge there. Good. Yeah, this is pretty good. Like most of this is nitpicky, I think. Same thing that I said up top. Again, this masking here feels really fussy when you could just put this down a little bit, shorten the stems a little bit. Here's an example where the ties, that's not going to fly. You have to match them, even if it crosses that flag or if it gets out of the way of the flag. But this is where you have two identical arcs and they're just offset like that. That looks really strange when it's the same, 2/8 on top of each other like that. This one should probably be a half note. That avoids any issues with that tie there. Let's keep going. One thing I would definitely say is drop the rehearsal marks. This piece is a chamber piece. There's no need for it. If you've got the measure numbers, which you do, then that's what they're going to use for their wayfinding. Rehearsal marks are not useful in a solo context like this. Here, get a little bit more space in there on that slur. This one is not going to fly here. This is too far apart. The one thing I've suggested in the past here is to just flip these so the eighth note actually lives on the left side. Again, more things with the ties, matching the ties. I'm going to try not to mark every single one. All right, next page. All right, this is pretty good. Again, same with the ties. I'm not going to mark every single one. Here we go again. Slur needs to go all the way across, or that should be a half note. Like I don't know if you're breaking this because you're trying to break the middle of the bar, but half notes don't need to break the middle of the bar. I said this before, is you want to match your slur and your tie arc. This is a bit difficult to draw with the mouse. See how the one arc is much broader, which is not the way it should be. Okay, very nice. Nice split here. This arc feels a little strange. I don't know why it's so flat. That's very flat arc there. Can give a bit more. Okay. Diminuendo. Yeah, if you really want to do it this way with the spread apart syllables, you can. I'm not a fan of it personally. I'm not sure about this syllables either. Diminuendo. Yeah, you might want to check on that. That doesn't sound right to me. Again, here we go, another half note. Get this guy right in there. Same here, half note. Get a slight collision there. And again, all you need to do is just pull those down just a little bit. Okay, this does match the font you had at the beginning, I believe. Right? I just don't think that font is the correct font. It really should be some sort of bold font. It also feels abnormally large, maybe by 2 or 3 points worth. So you might want to get that a little bit smaller. All right. This is good. Again, ties. Talked about that. Good. Again, half note. Crescendo, same deal with the diminuendo. This one is so short that I would literally just do this. That the doing the thing where you split apart the word like that is very old fashioned. I would definitely avoid that. This distance is too great. There's no reason to have that so big. So I would definitely reduce that. And if the issue is getting the crescendo out of the way, do that. Should also do one of these. Just get it to be one length there. And again, this is flat here. Get it right down in there. And same on this guy. This one you do actually have room to do a slur going down. That's good. Portato looks good. Yep. Okay, this one, get it right in there with that A there. And give this one a little bit more curve on it there so it gets out of the way. Nice. Curve on this one looks a little bit funny. You probably want to get it up and over like that. It's a bit tricky to do with the mouse here. There we go. Okay, good. All right, so now we're in the second section. Again, get these slurs right down in there. Same thing. This slur needs to go all the way to the end. Again, too flat. Yeah, the slur flatness is a real problem overall. I would definitely look into that. And get this one as close as you can. You probably won't get it all the way in the bottom space there, but get it as close as you can. This is not going to work either. If this is actually all one part, which I don't know if it is. I don't know if it was one of these. Which means these probably should be separated, even though they're tied. They're two separate phrases. All right. This one should definitely go underneath. Also here, this is a subtle one. That tie should go underneath as well. Because it's an A, just pretend you had a stem here. And then you'd see that the tie would go underneath. All right, now we start getting into the triplets. So this is okay. It's just the slurs kind of in the wrong shape. I would first of all get it right down in there, and then I would angle this guy and probably thread the needle here so that your slur is going that way, and then your 3 can be on either side, and that's totally fine. Do the same here. All right, this is interesting. I don't think this was in the original. The S slurs definitely were not in the original. That might be taking a little bit too much editorial freedom with this, but let's assume that choice is legitimate and we want to go run with it. So first of all, a couple of these need to be upstemmed, starting with this one. The rest, this one should not. It doesn't matter. You could go either way because the two extreme notes. But I probably would go upstem as well, just to match it with this one. And then the rest of these would be downstem as well. So in that case, you wouldn't actually need an S slur. You would just do one of these. And I find S slurs to be very fussy and most of the time unnecessary. Especially if this is considered one complete thing. Another thing is I would definitely add the rest back in, because usually you remove the rest if the hand for the respective staff is on the other staff, but in this case that's not what's going on here. So the right hand is definitely resting in this measure, unless the pianist does something different, but whatever. Up here, all these threes, they need to be on the beam side. So get rid of those. It's nice that you're writing them in at least. Some people weren't doing that because the original didn't do that. This should be dotted quarter here, which gets rid of these. Same here, triple. This 3 seems a little unnecessary. I mean, unless you're going to add the 3s all the way through here. I see what you're getting at. Like, 3s here are the same, but then it just disappears. I think it's important to put the 3s here when it suddenly changes to the brackets. So maybe put it all in this bar. And then again, your slurs need to get some more curve on them. Get them in there. Like, these are very flat. Give them some arc. Okay. So like here you're adding it back in when it's not necessary. The rhythm didn't change. All right, so get rid of those. Okay, this is a good use of the cross staff here. That's fine. Here again. Again, this same mistake I've seen a couple times. Gotta upstem those. Ooh, got a little broken thing there. Sol D, Sol G. I'm not sure why this is extending to the one side. That's not correct for a line like that. Probably do a whole note here. Same here. Next page. Definitely don't need this. The arrow. Arpeggios are always going to be up by default. This should be flipped. This voice here. Because the higher voice should be stems up. Unless there's some other reason, but there isn't here. All right. This should be a dotted half. I don't know what's going on there. All right. Get these slurs more curved. Good portato. That's all fine. No need for a loco. Your 8th line is very clear. You don't need a loco there. Okay, now we're getting into the Triplet Land. So this is a bit of a mix of modern and historical practices, and I would just pick one and stick with it, right? So first of all, separate trill for each note, every note change. And then for most of these, you don't actually need these. These are redundant because they're not actually telling you anything. The trill is already telling you that the next note up is going to be an F sharp, right? Because the F sharp is in the key signature. So I would get rid of these. These aren't really They're not telling you anything that the trill sign doesn't tell you. Also, I'm not a fan of this inconsistency here. You got crescendo split apart here, but then it's not here. So make it consistent across both. Subtle alignment problem there. And these should be stems down. All right, next page. See, again here, this isn't telling you anything. Again, half note. I would get rid of this 8VA. This 8VA is hurting more than it's helping. So just get this whole passage up. This is not helping either. This 3 against 2. The triplets are continuing here. So the pianist is just going to have to be eagle-eyed about this. There's no way to really point that out easily. And in this style of music, it happens all the time. I wouldn't worry too much. So we started duple here, and then we're back into triplets. Why is the 1 beat missing? That just looks like an error. And then what you probably can do is keep the 1 measure, and then after that, all of these can go. And I would very much avoid this practice with the tremolo, the shorthand for triplets. I would just avoid it entirely. It's not really helping anything here. You know, doesn't really make this easier to read. In fact, it makes it harder, because sometimes when you have to write it out, then you're thinking what's going on. So yeah, I would avoid it entirely and just write it out. It's not a hindrance to do so. Again, triplet's always got to be on the beam side, unless you have a good reason not to. All right, again, with those half notes, gotta get those half notes across the beat, across the bar. All right, yeah, so all these triplets, all the triplet markings, I would get rid of them. Fill in all of the fill in all the 8th notes for the triplets. Then a couple of these need to be flipped in direction, but that's a subtle little thing right there. Right here. Right here. I'm getting a little messy here. Again, that's a very flat slur. Get some curve in there. All right. This does not need the brackets here. We can get rid of that. The 3 on the beam is enough. It's very obvious what's going on. I would definitely not do this, where the hairpin is inside the tie like that. That's another old-fashioned technique. I would not do that anymore. Again, all these triplets can go. It's very obvious that the entire thing is triplets, so just get rid of them. They're just getting in the way at this point. Same here. Diminuendo. Probably just do one of those and get your dynamics closer so you can bring these staves closer together, because they're quite far apart in this spot. Same here. Your triplets are just getting in the way. Yeah, same here. The triplets are just in the way. They're not contributing. This trill should put a squiggly there to show that it's going all the way. And again, this A is not telling you anything. The trill tells you that already. And I've said this in the past on a couple of others. These should be 16ths there. It's the standard practice for that now. Okay, good. Some of these hairpins feel really wide, like this one here. Like this makes sense, but this doesn't. That feels really wide to me. And match your arc there. Yeah, and same from before. Just write them out. Might as well write them out. It's not really going to hurt anything. Yeah, very good. All right. One thing I forgot to mention at the top there is these header things, not necessary. This is not a full score. I mean, it is a full score that it has all the stuff, but it's not a full score in like what you mean a full score, which would be like an orchestral big full score. That's not what this is. So there's no need for that. And even if it was a full score, you still don't need it. That sort of indication is not needed in the piano part because there's a piano part and a violin part. The violin part is the special thing that needs to be marked. Okay, so speaking of that, let's look at the violin part. Everything about the layout and all that probably all applies in this. Sure looks like it from a quick glance. Let's have a look at the sizing. So we have 7mm here. Very good. Title feels large to me. I would definitely bring that down in size. This is good up here. I would avoid these older fashioned multi-rests because they're not very useful. They don't tell you much more, and the newer ones with the H bar are more conspicuous anyway. I would also get rid of this Q. It's totally not necessary. It's 4 bars. It's very clear when to come in. I'm not going to mark every slur because we did that all in the piano part, so all of that would apply here. In this case, get it out of the way. Make sure there's a little white space in there. And like I said before, get rid of the rehearsal marks. They're not useful and they're just adding clutter. One thing I would definitely work on in this violin part is the layout. Specifically, the fact that it's too spaced out. Especially here, you've got 6 systems on the first page, which is way too few. And I think you could just definitely get it more condensed because you can definitely fit this all into 2 pages. And another thing is the way the systems are spaced. So like right here, you can see these are quite far apart here, while the ones surrounding it are closer. And it's always better to have them consistent across a whole page unless there's some reason not to, but right here you have it so spaced out that you don't need to have that difference there. Okay. And then there's just little details here and there, like I said from before, all the slur things we talked about in the piano score would apply. That's not aligned properly. That needs to be aligned better. There's a few note issues, but that was all from the piano. Like these half notes, those should be half notes. I think one final point would be about the 8VA lines. So the part does not have them while the score does. I think that's going to be a problem for some spots because it's very common to use those types of objects as a wayfinding device. So, for example, the pianist would say, let's start where your 8VA line is, and then the violinist will not have an 8VA line in their part. So it's always better to make the score and the part match as much as possible, especially since in the piano part you had enough space in there where you could actually go as written without the 8VAs. You could probably get away with a couple of those 8VAs in the part anyway. Like right at the end here, it gets very high right here. Right here it gets very high. But, it's totally legitimate, I think, to just keep them as written without any AVAs. But that's an editorial choice. Anyway, so I think that wraps up my comments on this one. So thank you for submitting, and we'll see you in the next one.